What's up, narrators? This is Mo, and I'm back with the Narratives Per Possession podcast, where we like to connect you to better basketball narrators. And we're already on a back-to-back tonight, second podcast in a row after we had a great podcast last night with Chris LeBron covering the Knicks. And we're doing back-to-backs before basketball even starts. So really excited to have this conversation tonight because for those who've been following me for a bit of time, I actually am a lifelong Chicago Bulls fan, and certainly I'm not team exclusive with Narratives Per Possession, but like this has been an episode I've wanted to have for some time to talk about like my native lifelong franchise, the Chicago Bulls. It's an interesting franchise for sure. A lot of ups, a lot of downs. And I'm going to do my best to recuse myself of fandom when I talk about this team because it can just go into a whole bunch of directions. And there's no guest I can think of that really I would want to talk about this team more than who I have tonight. He covers the Chicago Bulls. He's credentialed and covers the Chicago Bulls for the Bigs Media. He's been inspiration to me personally as a content creator, and he's just a great guy overall. I am honored and privileged to bring my guy up, Drew Stevens from the Bigs, everybody.
Mo, come on, man. That's too much. That's way too much sauce, man. But I appreciate it, though. I definitely appreciate it, man. You know, you're my man.
Yeah, no, man. When I started doing my own content thing, like a day one, pretty much, man, and just appreciate always the support. So I had to have you on here for the first official Bulls conversation I had. So, man, welcome. Appreciate having you, man.
I appreciate you. I'm honored, man. It's so many great people that cover this team in terms of being credentialed members of the media, but then also people like yourself who, you know, look at this team, look at the NBA, or put out daily pods about the Chicago Bulls exclusively. There's no shortage of people who cover this team in whatever shape, form, or fashion that they choose to do. So for you to have me on to talk about this team tonight, man, I appreciate you, man. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we're going to talk about the Bulls, but I just want to do this just because it's like, yeah, I'm going to recuse myself of my Bulls fandom, but I got to get a pulse from you because the Chicago Bears are 500. It's a bye week. Again, the Chicago Bears are 500. I just have to know because you were a little bit iffy, I think, about them for that first game. How are you feeling about your Bears right now? Are you bearing down, Drew? Are you like fully bearing down?
I'm not bearing down. Mo, I've gotten to the age now, man, where with Chicago sports in general and the Bears specifically, I keep my expectations really low, man. I'm happy that they're 2-2 as a lifelong Bears fan, but I'm not gonna get ahead of myself. Like I still think this is probably an 8-win team. Hopefully this bye week gives them a chance to self-evaluate, as my man Herb Howard, who's also obviously a member of the Bigs, would say. So I just want to see what comes of it, man. Continue to see some development. I think that, you know, while we want this team to play well and get as many wins as they can, I'm still more so focused on Caleb because I feel like we know he's going to be here at least in the short term, hopefully the long term. And I wanted to see how he continues to grow as a quarterback and what lessons he can take from Ben Johnson and how much better of a quarterback and leader he can become. That's really what it boils down to for me as a Bears fan this season.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I've had a little bit of fun on Twitter. I've been doing like a little bit of like liquored up optimistic Bears fan kind of bit, and I might do a bit more with each Bears winner. Like because honestly, it's like same. Like I've been watching Bears all my life, and it's it's sad how many times we've actually seen a competent quarterback in a Bears uniform doing competent, normal NFL football things with the football. And it's just like, I see Caleb Williams like in a clean pocket, like getting 3-step drops, boom, marching down the field. And these are just like foreign concepts because everything, like the best forms of Bears football have always been running backs and middle linebackers that also score. Like it's been more defense touchdowns in my life than offense. Like, so.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I I've grown very tired of watching the Bears get into the red zone and leave with field goals. So I'm there right there with you, man.
Yeah, but I had to get that pulse. I had to get that pulse check. I would be remiss if we didn't at least talk a little Bears football in October.
No doubt.
But this is a basketball podcast, so we have to move on to the Chicago sports team of the hour, which is the Chicago Bulls. You were in Bulls Media Day Monday, and I mean, I will say from my own point of view, I made a point not to delve too deeply into it because I really wanted so like approach it from a fresh set of ears and eyes, and definitely from your perspective. And I should also let me make sure I'm plugging. You wrote a great column reporting from Media Day as well, and I'll drop that in the comments for everybody's in the chat tonight.
Appreciate
and
you,
like
man.
at a high level, man, like how would you like walk me through what you were expecting from that Media Day event, what it was like when you sitting there having the conversations with obviously the front office and the players, and then kind of like where your retrospective feelings about that event.
Walking in, I think I expected most of what we heard from AK. I think that we kind of knew where this thing was going to go based on his comments at his end of season presser, based on Mark Eversley's comments at the post draft day presser. We knew that this front office is touting the amount of financial flexibility they're going to have going into next summer. We knew that, they were going to bring back Josh Giddey for whatever amount they agreed upon with his representation. We knew that obviously Kobe and Ayo are still here right now, two guys who will be free agents going into next summer. So, those are some of the things, the nuts and bolts of kind of what we could expect going into the presser. I think that the buzzword, the theme of the day on Monday was physicality. They obviously felt a way about how they lost that play-in game against Miami, ended up losing by 19 points, had been down by as many as 25 points. And I think right from the bat, Miami jumped on them, had them back on their heels. Josh Giddey said as much during his part of the Media Day presser. But then they started talking about AK in general, about how, the mindset has to change, that guys need to learn from that moment and go into this season and show that they've learned from it and be able to play with more physicality, play tougher on a more consistent basis. He touted the acquisition of Isaac Okoro, so did Billy Donovan. Isaac's name was brought up a lot during Media Day. We got a chance to speak to Isaac Tuesday after the first training camp practice. He seemed like he's roaring to go. We've seen footage of him taking charges in the team, celebrating him for do so. I remain skeptical about how much the defense can be expected to change or how much consistency we'll see with them playing tougher by just adding Isaac to the mix. Like, you still have guys on this team who, even though they're young age-wise, like there's 7 guys on this team who are 26 years of age or younger, but have already been in the league for at least 4 years. So we're not talking about guys who have a great deal of wealth between where they are now and what their ceiling is. Like, I think for the most part, we kind of know who guys are. And I say that in one form, but then in another, I do understand that roles can be different. We've seen Kobe White in year 5, year 6, make jumps, make leaps. So it's not to say that improvements can't be made past a certain date or past a certain year in the league. But I'm very skeptical about there being that big of a difference in the mindset of this team and the amount of physicality that they play with just because they went out and got Isaac Okoro and they suffered that loss to Miami. Like, I don't know if it's all going to come together the way that the front office wants it to, just based off of those factors alone.
Yeah, and like it's interesting hearing your interpretation of sort of that theme that the front office was sharing at media day. And I think my immediate reaction to that is like I can't shake a logic test that's in my mind that okay, it sounds like what you're saying is by adding Isaac Okoro, we expect to like we expect to build or translate a new physical defensive identity by simply the addition of this one player. And okay, so then I have to add the editorial as a Bulls fan. Like that really sounds like the same kind of approach of, oh, we went and got Patrick Beverly as the buyout. We went and acquired Alex Caruso and Lonzo Ball. And I think it just, to me, it begs a bigger question of what is actually the defensive philosophy of Arturas Karnisovas as the head person of this entire organization. Because as much as I feel like the Bulls have through each one of these media days in the Arturas Karnisovas regime touted like different, like frankly, offensive slogans, it seems to me that the defense has always been like an afterthought or kind of like treated like something you can solve with special teams edition. And it feels like that's what Okoro is sliding himself in, being like unknowingly, perhaps unknowingly being slided into. Like, you're gonna fix our defense, Isaac. Are you ready to fix the defense? Like, and let me frame it this way back to you. Is it naive to suggest that there's a difference between individual NBA defense and team NBA defense?
No. There's definitely a difference. I think we see that just on a case by case basis of guys in the league. Some guys are much better when they're defending on the ball and not having to have their head on a swivel and see screens coming and see different actions of what's happening and be able to think a step or two ahead. For instance, Lonzo Ball is great at that. He can play on the ball and off. Like, he can be the quarterback of a defense and help guys be in position to make a play or at least to be in the right spot. And then there's vice versa. Some guys are better off the ball, better team defenders. Your Nikola Vucevic's of the world, but not so great maybe guarding the ball. But I'm interested to see what Billy Donovan can do now that he has Isaac Okoro in the fold and how he may adjust things. One of the things that Arturas brought up during his opening speech was he talked about how, in addition to playing with more physicality and being tougher, that, they could try to, be more active, get more deflections, try to speed or disrupt opponents up with their maybe some half court trapping, full court press, maybe throwing some zone in there. So I'm interested to see how that goes this season. What does Billy do to get this team more possessions? What does he do to throw, opposing offenses off kilter a little bit on the defensive side of the ball, just to help this team out? But again, it's kind of that double-edged sword, or that catch 22, where, okay, you want to talk about getting deflections, you want to talk about crashing the offensive glass, but at what cost to your transition defense, or at what cost to the style of play that you adopted last season, where you were, I believe, you played at the second fastest pace in the league? Like, what is the opportunity cost of trying to be better defensively? What does that do to how you want to play the game of basketball on the offensive side of the court with a team that, is kind of, they have to play fast? Like, that's the way this team is going to stay in games, and that's the way this team is going to challenge their opponents, is by running them up and down the court, playing as fast as possible, trying to take care of the ball in the process of doing that, and taking advantage of the personnel that they do have on this team that, as we all know, doesn't have that true top shelf go-to guy.
Yeah, it's and I do worry. It would be wonderful, like, if somehow you could have both Arturas Karnisovas and Billy Donovan in the same room at the same time, and you can almost talk to them about the roster construction as if like you were reviewing the blueprint of a building that you were trying to structure and bring it together, because the pace thing has been a point of emphasis with this organization now, going back to last year. And if you think about it, I feel like if you treat it just like a design project, there probably is an argument to be made that this decision to just be so hard charging in the pace category, it probably has compromised whatever defensive identity the Bulls had. Because I mean, what, 2-3 seasons ago, there was that voodoo magic defensive effort the Bulls had, where they're a league top 10 defense, and most of it was playing the possession game basically, because you still had DeMar DeRozan, who was just hyper efficient in half court, didn't turn the ball over, wasn't aesthetically pleasing, but I say that to drive at least poke at a point that there's trade-offs to really be, I think, evaluate this Bulls roster at some point. And it seems like the trade-offs aren't really being managed as they could. That's just my perception. I don't know. Like what do you think about that?
In terms of the roster balance, or
yeah, because it's like Arturas is trying to be a producer and sliding the EQ knobs, where it's like, oh, let me slide up this defensive knob with this one person because that's going to offset all these compromised defenders that probably I would like to hide all four of them, but I can't.
Yeah, there is definitely an imbalance to this roster, not just positionally, but also in the fact that there's very few two-way guys who don't give you something on one end, but then take it away on the other. So in that way, I think there's a lot of work to be done on this roster. Ideally, you have 3, 4, 5 guys who you can count on both sides of the ball. I don't know how prevalent that is in the league. I think maybe the Thunder come closest to that kind of model or that standard. But there's work to be done. And again, AK talks about being able to have financial flexibility next summer. So we'll see what he does with it and what positions he looks to address, and whatever players he's able to bring in, how they might affect each side of the court.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I mean, a big part of what dominated storylines with the Bulls this summer, it was Josh Giddey and that whole restricted free agency saga. Finally a deal was hammered out a few weeks ago. What takeaways did you have from media day in just sort of the aftermath or the postmortem conversations about Giddey himself going through that whole RFA process, and Arturas as well? Any takeaways you had from that?
I think the main thing was just that Arturas didn't rush out to sign Josh. Obviously, I think we all knew that he was going to sign him to some sort of deal, just because he traded Alex for him and has pretty much designed this roster, or is in a process of designing this roster around Josh Giddey. Because how can you not? I think a player with Josh's skill set, with his strengths and his weaknesses, you have to build it in a certain way that accentuates his strengths and kind of hides his weaknesses. He's not an easy player to build around. And that's why I think, had I been running this team, I probably would not have looked to bring Josh Giddey in. And that's not to say that, he didn't make strides to improve toward the end of last season, or that he is a finished product, but he strains, I think, what you can do roster-wise because of his limitations. Maybe this year he changes my mind and changes other people's minds, and shows that he has a legit full season long impact on winning and can play consistently with enough force defensively or just competency where he's not taken away from the team or putting the team at a disadvantage on that side of the ball. I think the contract was cool. I'm not a big numbers guy. I think that while Arturas did use his leverage, he didn't squeeze as hard as he could have. Obviously, no other team was offering Josh any money. But again, it's that checks and balances where Arturas wants Josh. So he's only going to squeeze but so much.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I was actually relatively surprised that the whole process went the way it did with Josh Giddey, because I suppose like my gut feeling, my instincts were that Arturas was going to find a way to rapidly get a deal done to his own detriment, frankly, because I just personally I've not been very impressed with many of the deals that he's negotiated in his time running the Bulls basketball operations department. And there was a train of thought that I had towards the end of last season where specifically on Josh Giddey's restricted free agency process, I made an argument that we have two data points, or we have a spectrum of like how AK has functioned in this type of process, and we have the Patrick Williams end of the spectrum, and then we have the Io DeSumo end of the spectrum. And my take was like, AK needs to be way closer to this IO process he used versus the PAT process. And I don't know, maybe he listens to me somehow. He did get close. He's pretty close to the IO process, if we remember what that was like for Io DeSumo, because that went for like 2 months, and it was like very little of a market for Io, despite sort of the defensive reputation he had built up for himself. And maybe it wasn't the best economic outcome for Io, but it certainly did allow AK to sign a team-friendly deal. I would give AK some credit in this, in the sense that you can't charge him with overpaying per se in an objective sense. If you are not a Giddey fan, you probably still like Josh Giddey should have got $20 million max. I think it's that. But I also could understand the point of view for people who are like super duper Giddey enthusiasts, and they wanted to see him get $30 million. It's like a middle of the road deal, which is hilarious because like so many mid things associated with the Bulls. So the money aspect of it, I don't have too many knocks on that, to be honest. The thing I want to take a step back and for people who are uninitiated with the last season of Chicago Bulls basketball with this Josh Giddey regime, can you offer some context and kind of like more detail on what are the strengths that you get when Josh Giddey's on the court, and then those deficiencies or the things that put a hard ceiling on which a basketball team might accomplish with Josh Giddey?
I think the big things are just his ability to help your team play fast, his defensive rebounding, his rebounding in general. He uses his size well in that manner. He's a good passer, especially, what do they call him? The slide wizard, the sideline out of bounds. Crazy name. I think toward the end of last season, I saw a really big step in his game in terms of him using his body and his strength to get all the way to the rim, as opposed to, maybe getting in the paint and throwing up flip shots or floaters. He started to get to the rim, get and ones, get to the free throw line, both he and Kobe, which made a big difference and played a big part in how well they played toward the end of last season. I think the deficiencies still remain from the OKC days, where he's not the type of guy that gets a lot of separation with the ball in his hands, where he can take pull-up threes or pull-up jumpers at a great clip. His off-ball shooting did improve in terms of his three-point shooting, but he's not at a level yet where teams are hauling ass to get out to him in closeouts. So, and defensively, he still got limitations there. I think he did put a more consistent effort into guarding on that side of the court. Again, maybe, halfway through the season, after he got maybe a little more comfortable in his role and, maybe his offense started clicking. So I think when your offense clicks, it kind of helps your defense. You're winning, you're beating teams. So I think that not just Josh, anybody, I think that helps give you a little more verve on that end of the floor. But it keeps it, in my mind, it always goes back to, okay, you guys played a certain way after the trade deadline. That 17 and 13 stretch to close the season, the last 30 games, that would have been a 46 win pace if extrapolated over an 82 game season. Let me see how you guys play over the course of a full season together. Let me see you guys play when there is no excuse of it being Mickey Mouse March, where guys are playing games and your opponents are playing. I mean, the best players on the other team are playing, and they're not resting, and nobody's trying to tank at the beginning of the season, and guys are in the lineup. Let me see what you guys look like then. And again, it's not to take away from what they did, but it's just more so me wanting to see proof of life. Let me make sure this is real. And I think, Arturas, that's what he wants to see too. Again, it's not the way that I would be running this team in terms of roster personnel, but he gets paid millions of dollars to do it. He just got another extension to do it that I believe runs through the 2027, 2028 season. So he's going to have that. It's an important season of evaluation for him, and we'll see where it goes.
There's a quote that before we got on, I mentioned this to you, right? I think there's a quote in your column that you wrote up on Media Day from Arturas. I just cannot shake this out of my head, and I want to talk about this quote for you because I think it actually serves as a really interesting contextual foundation for those points that you made. I mean, there's some, from my point of view, there's some very serious evaluations that need to start with opening night and game, like the very first game for this roster, and they need to really be like evaluations with urgency. The quote so the quote I want to bring from your piece, right? You quote there's a quote from Arturas where he says, "We're building a strong foundation that will continue to develop while learning to win together." The reason why I can't shake that quote is because from my own experience, for the multiple Bulls media days or Arturas Karnišov's press conferences I've listened to from him, those word choices have been boilerplate for him. And I find that to be very confusing. The NBA executive going into his 6th season of running an NBA franchise still talks about foundations and learning. And there are probably indictments and opinions I can offer to that. But how confident are you, Drew, that there truly can be like the necessary evaluations like exercised by this front office if that's sort of like the overarching tones being set, where it's like we're still in, like we're in the 6th season, but we're still talking about foundation to build and learning. Like there's still many players that have been on this roster since AK took over the franchise. Like, what is he still trying to learn about this organization and his roster?
Man, that's a good question. That's a good question. I think that the simple answer is he wants to see if that Mickey Mouse stretch was real too. And it's the thing about players who we've seen him bring in, or players that have been on his roster since he's been in the big chair. These guys are always more valuable to the Bulls and to him than they are around the league, which I think is a problem. And I think that makes evaluation tough. I think that makes his negotiations for potential trades tough. We've heard about other GMs not holding him in high regard in terms of how negotiations have gone and just that whole process. His asking price for certain players. Mo, I don't. You asked me to start your question if my level of confidence. I'm assuming you mean my level of confidence in him to evaluate.
Yeah,
my confidence is low. My confidence is low, Mo. Because I don't know what he's looking at. Every media day, we ask him to try to give us. We try to pin him down on giving us some specific things that he's looking at, things that we can use to, comb over the season with a fine-tooth comb, to look at it with a magnifying glass and say, this is what you wanted to do. Did you do it? And I think that he does not do it. And I think he doesn't do it so that he gives himself an out at the end of the year. Yeah. He didn't set any goals. So there's nothing that we can necessarily look at and say, well, you didn't do this, or this team struggled in this area that you were hoping that they would do well in and would succeed. Why didn't they? Or now that you know that they didn't do well, what's your fix? How are you going to solve it? He tends to lean into, we're not going to worry about wins. His big thing now, we're not going to throw any expectations anywhere, not on the team, not on their rookie, Noah, nothing. He didn't even put out the expectation of his team protecting home court, which had been there the last couple seasons. That's one of the things he reached for. We didn't even get that this time around. So it's a frustrating thing to have to deal with. His press conferences are frustrating because of that. You want to try to pin him on something and you really can't. And because of that, he tends to look at small stretches in space. We've seen it with the 14-9 season where they picked up Patrick Beverley. We saw it last year with the 15-5 stretch that he and Mark Eversley talked about. It's small things that he likes to cherry pick to give the fans the impression that this is going to be a springboard to something better. And each time he's done that, it hasn't led to anything better. It's just led to more of the same, which is mediocrity, which is let's charge hard through the tape of the regular season so that we can make the play-in tournament and maybe give ourselves a chance to win the playoffs. But even if we don't win the play-in tournament, we've got a group of young guys who are building. And because they're building, that means that there's something here. There's a foundation here that we can stand on and we can use to propel this team and this franchise to something greater. But I remain skeptical. I remain skeptical. I don't think that there's a foundation here that is really going to be worth a damn in the sense of his stated ultimate goal of winning a championship. He talks about not skipping steps. That's debatable. He's not giving himself opportunities to make multiple draft picks. He's not helping himself build for the future. It's more so, let's stay where we are. Let's not fall any lower than we are. If nothing else, we're going to be competitive on a night-to-night basis, competitive in air quotes. And at worst, we're going to make the play-in tournament. And there's a small morsel of hope. If this happens, if this happens, if this happens, if that happens, we'll make the playoffs. We'll stop being an afterthought in national consciousness. And it's got to be frustrating for a great number of fans to have watched this kind of go on at least the last 3 seasons. It's frustrating for me as somebody who's grown up watching this team to see just what is allowed to go on. Again, the fact that he and Mark got extensions, a second round of extensions. I just want to know why. Maybe at some point, my media brethren and I will be able to ask Michael Reinsdorf that specific question. You know, what was his performance evaluation? What are you grading him on? And how much should fans believe that your top priority is making sure that butts are in the seats? Obviously, you know, there may not be a good answer to that specific question, but certain things need to be asked, man, because we're going on the 28th year or 28th season since this team last won a championship, man. People are gonna start forgetting those 90s Bulls as hard or as much as this franchise tries to make sure that those days live on with the Ring of Honor, with the customary social media posts about each championship year and things of that nature, the Derrick Rose night, and now the Derrick Rose retirement ceremony that's coming up in January. As hard as they try to make sure that we don't forget, it's going to get harder to do so the farther we get away from 1998.
Yeah, I mean, we're 14 years removed from 2011. Like that Eastern Conference final with D Rose feels like, you know, eternity ago.
Yeah, like how much longer are they going to draft a player and that player talk about Michael Jordan or talk about Scottie Pippen and those 90s Bulls teams? Like at a certain point, I mean, it's going to be like black and white to them in terms of like the old black and white 60s eras of the NBA. They don't know what they're talking about. They just know a name and they know that this guy was a legend and he played this way and the guys talk about him and he's very popular. At least he was popular back in the day. They don't really know that team. They don't know that era of Bulls basketball. The closest Modest Buzelis has seen the Bulls get to a championship was Derrick Rose. The Eastern Conference Finals. That's the closest he saw. And they got gentlemanly swept out of that series by LeBron and the Miami Heat. Like, things have to change, and the longer they don't change, the more fuel there is for the fire that this franchise really does not care to aspire for better. And I know we're probably going to get into it later on, and I may end up repeating myself, but I think that they're leaning on internal development, partly because they are looking at next summer's cap space, but also because they have a player who they are hoping and wishing can take some of the heat off this franchise in Modest Buzelis. And while he's wired the right way, he's wired to be this ambitious player who kind of demands more of the franchise and gets them to put together an actual championship contending team. Until his game gets there, until his production gets there, until his body gets there, I think they're rowing the boat in a circle with one paddle, I should say.
It feels that way. And definitely I openly encourage your media brethren. I think the name Michael Reinsdorf is probably not mentioned enough in critical conversations about the Chicago Bulls. A lot of fan heat will go at Billy Donovan. Honestly, I think a lot more heat has gone to AK over like the last two seasons. I think that was a slow build, but it's kind of beyond both of those gentlemen. Like Michael Reinsdorf really should speak on like why he continues to own the Chicago Bulls and what is his ultimate objective for like owning that franchise. Like, and does it involve legitimate modern competitive NBA basketball? Because it just I personally haven't seen it now in 15 years. I feel like I have to go back to like 15 years for when it felt like the Bulls were actually a relevant NBA franchise.
All valid points. All valid points. The closest that we've seen, or the most relevant this team has been, was the early part of the 2021-22 season. I don't know where that specific roster could have gone had it been able to avoid injuries, but that's the closest we saw to a relevant team, one that was being praised in the national media instead of, just a 5 to 10 second sound bite or I don't know what they're doing comment,
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, it seemed like there's something. It seems like it's kind of like I feel like when Lonzo went down, it was almost like if for some reason you haven't watched Talladega Nights, I'm about to teach you about Talladega Nights, but I have to go here with it. It very much was like when Lonzo got injured, like AK became Ricky Bobby after the car crash, and it's just like he couldn't shake the fact that he's in this car crash. Didn't really injure him, but he's been locked into like a very singular, traumatic, almost like scared to make a move kind of thing, where it's just like AK will not get out of the chair until somebody stabs him in the leg with a fork. He's not going to change.
Yeah, that roster was definitely his baby.
Yeah, and it's just like I still don't think he shook it, because even like the whole premise of Josh Giddey's existence on this roster, that great Jamal Collier column from not this past summer, but the summer before, where I mean he's sharing sort of the inner workings of like that thought process of what they need to do, and more or less alluding to like, oh, we have to recapture 2021. I would be like, if I could be a fly on AK's wall, I wouldn't be surprised if like that's constantly what he's looking at, is like the first 35 games on like a wall or something. It's like, I'm gonna get back to these 35 games.
Hey man, you said it. I didn't. You said it.
Yeah, no, I said that. That's my editorial. But you brought Maz Buzelis, and I think that's a good contrast, because I mean, if there's any source of hope, and for me personally, like I put all my hope in the Bulls, singularly in Maz Buzelis, because there's clear talent there, and also just a character that's necessary. I think, given the questionable competitive motives of his management and his ownership, like how was that? Just like hearing, because I've read some of the quotes from him from me today. Like, what was that? Could you actually describe that contrast in energy? Because I have to think that in the room when you heard that, when you heard Miles saying what he said after AK's normal song and dance, like that had to brought like a different energy.
It did, and I think a lot of that is personality driven. Both he and Kobe, I thought, I think they're two of the more like uplifting personalities, really enjoyable to listen to and to be around. But when Modest came to the podium, it was like somebody turned the volume up on the music. You know what I mean? Like it was different energy in there. Obviously, he's a young guy, thinks very highly of himself, very confident, but also, also humble too. But never ceases to impress me just with his desire to be great and the standard that he holds himself to. He was asked his goals for the season, and he talked about wanting to win most improved player. He also talked about how fans should look out for his defense this year. And this is somebody who I think last season placed 6th or 7th in terms of the rookie leaderboard for the franchise in blocks. So I'm interested to see what that looks like with him on that side of the court. He also talked about wanting to be pushed hard, wanting to be coached hard by Billy Donovan and the staff, and to coach him as if he's already an all-defensive player. So I love that ambition. Again, that coming from him, a guy who plays for a franchise that presumably would rather not be ambitious, to not be imaginative when it comes to their personnel decisions, both upstairs and on the court. Like, that's a breath of fresh air to me. It's always enjoyable to talk to Modest, man. He clearly wants to win a championship. He mentions it, not as often as he can, but he says it often enough where where his mindset is. He talked about the benchmark for team success being a championship, whereas you ask AK what his goals are for the season, and it's to compete and to win as many games as possible. And the contrast in those two things are just so stark to me, and they just paint such a picture of what this franchise is and isn't, but also of the urgency that exists for Modest to become that guy. Because I think this organization has to be forced into being better and wanting better. You know, who knows what this franchise would have been had it not drafted Michael Jordan or Derrick Rose. Like, there's certain guys you get in the building that you have to, you're obliged to do something with. You can't just go through the motions or settle for playing tournament appearances or being just good enough. Like, you owe it to them. You owe it to the fans. You owe it to your organization to strive for something better. And I think Modest is that new guy, or at least he can be that new guy. And for right now, he is all, I think, Bulls fans, a lot of Bulls fans are pinning their hopes on, and for good reason.
Absolutely. His talent is amazing. And again, like for the edification of perhaps folks who didn't watch, the entirety or even a majority of the Bulls games last season, can you talk about what Moss, when he was given sort of like consistent rotation minutes, like what was Moss Buzel's really able to do to impact the game on I'll limit it to defense because like I think his offense still is a work in process, but it's at least defensively, because you mentioned like he could have been on the leaderboard for blocks if like the clock, his minutes were up there. Like what was he doing as a defender that in that rookie season that stood out to you?
I think just his instincts. Although he's still slight of build, he's obviously still working on that. He's such a long athlete that he can make up for some of that with those traits that he has. He just has good instincts. He's a good feel for the game on that side of the ball. He knows when to come over and help. So a lot of those blocks were coming on weak side help situations, which is something that this team really didn't have before. I think Patrick Williams showed it in glimpses and fits and starts sometimes throughout his first 4 years here. Was last year's fifth year? His first 4 years. Yeah, so just that, man. And I think I'm hoping that part of Modest saying that fans should look out for his defense is him doing even more and not him growing from being, a very good help defender to him being a good man defender, and where that goes, like just putting all those pieces together. Like he prides himself on being able to do everything on the court. So I want to see that kind of translate going into his sophomore year.
Yeah. What glimpses, if any, did you get into what the Bulls' defensive sort of like MO or like the identity, what it might be trending towards from the first day of practice that you did attend this week?
So we don't get to see practice. When we come in, the guys are usually like shooting maybe free throws or going around the world from the arc. So we don't get to see like specifics during practice or anything like that. But it goes back to kind of what AK said during media day, just things that they may try to do defensively to get more possessions. I think Billy Donovan said that opponents took 3 or 4 more shots than they did last season. So they're trying to find ways to even that out, if not turn that in their favor. And one of the ways they want to do that is, I think, by playing more aggressively on the defensive side of the ball. Again, whether that be, maybe playing full court defense or pressing full court, trapping, zoning up, trying to play with more active hands. Isaac Okoro is supposed to play a big part in that. So we'll see what influence he can have. Guys have talked ad nauseum about his intensity and his effort and the way that he gets after defensively being contagious. So we'll see just how contagious it is opening night and as we go along in the season, and if they can actually be more physical throughout the entirety of the season, or is it something that's going to waver? I think that ever since Billy Donovan took over, physicality has been kind of one of the elephants in the room. So again, the personnel hasn't changed that much, and the personnel outside of Modest, outside of Noah, they're young in age but not in experience. I'm wondering, can you teach not exactly old dog new tricks?
Yeah. And to just like take it, like, what are the tricks that are going to be taught to improve the physicality? In a lot of ways, like that goes back to the whole evaluation aspect of this. Like, I would almost want to challenge AK to explicitly define the terms of physicality. What does that mean? This isn't 1995, so it's not going to be hand checking. You're not going to put dudes on deck if they try to drive the lane. Like, they're like, I can make some educated assumptions on what the physicality might look like. I mean, certainly, like, we saw probably the most physical playoffs we've seen in years this past season. So, pickup points are part of that. I would agree with that. I mean, actually, Rick Carlisle, he did an interview with Zach Lowe just last week, and he talked about like that was like the foundational element of what transformed the Pacers. Everybody wants to actually talk about them with the running and the pace, but he talked about like, we committed to being a press team, picking up full court, and you saw it throughout that entire playoffs run. And then even like, I was just talking about this last night with Chris LeBron about the Knicks. That first round series between the Knicks and the Pistons, that really disrupted Brunson and Dennis Schroeder. Like, Dennis Schroeder knows how to press Jalen Brunson because he showed it actually in the World Championships, the 23 World Championships. I think that really is going to become a trend anyway in general for the league with defense, where like the pickup points are just going to start as soon as the ball is taken out because you don't have a choice now because of how aggressive teams have become with their early offense or transition offense. Like, that's where the defense has to start, is at that tech out. Like, you're not going to wait and set up after half court because the team will already probably hit their second action by then. Yeah. But I digress with that. It's AK, and then unfortunately, I think by proxy, Billy is going to really have to speak to like what is the development plan, what are the attributes of their physicality. Like, they do have to define that this season with urgency, the same way that they spent so much time talking about changing the shot profile and we're going to take more threes, we're going to run faster. Like, there really needs to be that level of detail about the defensive conversation, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I take it as him wanting to see a shift in mindset, or at least a consistent mindset of putting your body on the line, taking charges, not giving ground, those types of things. I think is maybe what he's hinting at. Again, man, the to say that, but then to only bring in Isaac Okoro, I just think it may be asking too much of guys or the wrong thing of guys. I don't know. And then you're still dealing with a bunch of expiring contracts and, another topic, or something that has continued to be a topic that they have pushed, is depth being the strength of this team, and wanting to play fast. Billy Donovan talked about after the first day of practice how, when they were scrimmaging, they had, I think, three groups of five, and he kept one of those groups of five on the court, but kept subbing the other group just to impress upon everybody like how much they need each other, and also just the amount of effort it's going to take to continuously play at the pace they want to play at. And I'm wondering, like, are they going to play faster than they did last year? Because like you said, like, Indiana is kind of a blueprint for the whole league in terms of playing fast but also playing with a certain level of intensity on the defensive side of the court that kind of helps you play fast. So I don't know, man. It's a copycat league, and you only have so long to kind of press on that advantage or that new thing that no other team, or not as many teams, have already leaned into.
Yeah. Just my personal opinion, I really think defense is the next frontier for the NBA. I mean, it's been so much I just feel like there's been so many innovations with offense that the pendulum is swinging back to defense to where that's going to be your real advantage if you're trying to be like the best of the best in this league. Like, who's going to be the most who's going to be the most conditioned, who's going to be the toughest to be able to withstand the onslaught of like all these teams that have like hyper optimized their transition offense already, because that's what the easiest offense is in terms of perception, and that's what they want to prioritize for efficient shot taking and all that good stuff. Like, and I keep like harping, I think, on this defensive thing too, because it's interesting that like the front office goes and gets Isaac Okoro, and this is like, for better or for worse, being like the poster child, the stamp of approval of like, this is how we're going to focus on defense. And it's like, just thinking out loud, like, why isn't it Miles Buzelis that is your tone setter for defense? Because a lot of basketball defense in general is what makes it challenging for people that only sort of anchor themselves when how they perceive basketball in terms of like box score, stats, or analytics, that stuff. Defense is difficult to quantify often because there's so many intangible things that go into great defense. It is the communication, it is the instincts, it's the timing, it's knowing where to rotate and how you rotate. Miles Buzelis presents a lot of things that you would want in terms of like building a new defense from scratch, because he is a vocal guy. He just brings a lot of those intangibles. And yeah, say all that, like, it's curious to me that like Miles isn't being talked about more, or maybe he is, and hopefully there is a path where frankly, Miles needs to be, I think, like being developed towards like being the defensive anchor for this franchise.
We'll see. We'll see. Like I said, he talked about fans needing to watch out for his defense this year, and him, essentially, I think he wants to win like every award. He talked about this summer wanting to be the best player ever, like the greatest player ever. So I think he's going to strive to kind of max out every attribute he can. Like, that's just that's the way he is. So I think we'll see this season if he becomes, or he takes a step in becoming a better defender, whether that means like an even better help defender or even better guy that's on the ball, fighting through screens, knowing where to be in certain situations, helping teammates be where they need to be, covering for teammates. Can he not only be a guy who is in the right spot, but we've seen him a little bit already erase mistakes. Can he do that in even greater detail? Can he erase the mistakes of of his teammates when they happen? Can he be that kind of guy?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, because the Bulls, they just need it, frankly. Defense has always been this. I feel like it's always required a level of overachievement by the Bulls to be just like minimally competent as in terms of defense, because they've tried to do the best with what they have in terms of you have Nikola Vucevic, who is just never really had the reputation of being a rim protector. There's some effective things he can do off the ball defensively, but it requires a very stout point of attack in front of him. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the Bulls only had that for 35 games. And like we saw how that fell apart very quickly. Yeah. So yeah, you hope Miles is like leveling up with that weak side weak side rim protection, able to really set a tone and influence the other players to at least give their best defensively. One player I want to touch on, actually, in that same vein, and I want to touch on this because I've seen it from Bulls fans sort of in social media. There's varying degrees of hopeful optimism about Noah Esingeh. I have to be disciplined. I'm not going to talk about what Noah Senga is probably known for at this point anymore from Las Vegas, but like hopefully like Noah used that to learn from it. We're not even going to talk about it. We know what it is. Where does he fit in this season? Is there something that he can contribute, you think, to this roster this season?
Man, again, they talk about this depth they have in this team, and you start like counting names, and Billy's only going to play a certain amount of guys. Like, it was funny, him and Sam Smith got into a little bit of a back and forth, not in a bad way, but Sam was asking him why wouldn't he just go 15 deep and kind of do like hockey substitutions, it's 5-man units and waves, because that is this team's greatest strength, their depth and their desire to want to play fast. Like, why not just press on that? Just use it, just lean into it. And Billy understood his point, but he explained that he didn't want to play that way because he didn't want to disrupt the rhythm of certain guys on the team. I think he fears that if he went too deep and you pull guys out and they're on the bench for a certain amount of time, you make it harder for them to stay warm, to stay in rhythm when they do get back on the court. And he basically killed that notion of him playing 15 guys. Like, he said that he could go 10 or 11 deep, which we've come to know him to do. So where Noah falls in that will be very interesting to see. Noah talked about having they haven't had any discussions about where he falls in the rotation, how many minutes he'll get. They've talked to him more about playing with energy on both sides of the court, similar to what they did with Modest Buzelis last year. I think the big thing with Modest that Billy talked about before he became like a regular starter was Modest just being able to control the controllables, like running the floor, playing with energy, crashing offensive glass, staying engaged defensively. So I think those same things are what he's going to look for in Noah this year. They talked about how well he plays without the ball, him having a great feel for the game, his shot looking good, like his form, but him still needing to work on that. He needs to work on his body. They talked about him being able to space the floor and knowing when to cut and things of that nature. So he needs to play. I don't expect him to play a lot, at least not initially. But he needs to get in there. But right, I think when the season starts, he's going to be behind Modest, Patrick, maybe even Julian Phillips, who in his own right still needs time. He needs time to develop. Obviously, I don't think fans or maybe even media are looking at Julian's ceiling the same way we might look at Noah. Noah's 18 years old, man. Like, but I still think you need to give Julian some repetitions as well. So I don't know exactly where Noah falls in that rotation. One other thing I tweeted out today that I was thinking about, because Billy likes to always have 3 ball handlers on the court, and I don't think he's going to trust Noah with the ball right away. Like, that gives you a very small group of his teammates that he's going to be on the court with. Like, it's either going to be him and Vooch or Zach Collins, that is, or Kobe, some combination of Kobe, Io, Kevin Huerter, Trey Jones, or Josh Giddey. Like, he's going to be on the court with 3 other ball handlers and a big man, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I don't know where he falls in, but he needs to play. Like, AK is preaching patience. Okay, you have the new contract extension. In my mind, fans are coming regardless, which makes this whole thing that much more laughable. Like, if the goal is to put butts in seats, like, that's a given. It feels like almost, and it's not. Let me not even get into that. It's a given. It's a given. So you need to be playing Noah. You need to see what he has. You need to give him some reps. I'm not saying he needs to start by the end of the season, but he needs to get his feet wet. I think that I will say that I learned a lot from how Billy coached and developed Modest, I was one of the people who, man, Modest needs to play. What are we doing here? Like, you guys aren't a playoff team. Like, let him get his reps. Let him get kind of that trial by fire. But Billy brought him along very slowly. There was a lot of times where he did not let him play through his mistakes. He pulled him out, used it as teaching moments. So, you know, it made me kind of take a step back and think more about other ways that players can develop. Obviously, I still think that the biggest development happens on the court, but there's so many other things that go into it as well that I didn't fully consider until Billy brought them up. So I think that we're in for a similar ride with Noah's development, probably an even slower ride.
I would think so. I mean, even from what I saw in Noah's Eurobasket sort of games, like the development areas are pretty stark, more so than Modest. I mean, I think with Modest last season, you knew his shot wasn't there yet. You knew he could do some ball handling, but you didn't really want him being like your primary ball handler or trying to initiate offense. Rather, you want Miles to pick his spots. You want Miles to finish plays. With Noah, I just like I wouldn't knock Billy at all for like being even more aggressive about like slow rolling his game minutes and just making sure that like there's firm footing being built up for him to be able to be effective at his own pace in the NBA.
Yeah, I'm with you. You. And if he happens to be in lineups that include a center and Modest, I think that says a lot about Modest's development as a ball handler. Again, because Billy wants to have three guys that he can trust with the ball in his hands, with the ball in his hands, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that would be such a boon for the Bulls because the Bulls just haven't had a ball handler who can then get back on the other side of the court and like really do some disruptive things defensively.
Since what, Jimmy Butler, would you say?
That would be the guy. Like,
Lonzo to an extent, right? When Lonzo was healthy, in a different way. He wasn't dominating the ball though.
He was, because he wasn't ball dominant like that. Yeah. He was more of like he was the connector.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. Like, even though Lonzo was nominally a point guard for the Bulls in those 35 games, like he was really he was initiating the break more than anything.
True. That's true.
But yeah, just to have somebody who could be like in a half court set, be on ball heavily, and then you could get back defensively. I think that would be an interesting thing to see like in a Bulls uniform again. Yeah, because I'm Jimmy forever. Yeah, like Jimmy, like we'll go a whole another hour rant about like the crimes and misdemeanors of the Chicago Bulls trading Jimmy Butler, but that's another episode. Yeah. The Bulls are so. Bulls
I want to be on that one. Can I make an offer to be on that one, or request?
You'll be the first one. I know there's a panel of people I can pull together for that one. I know for a fact. Shout, Salim, where you at? You somewhere out there, Salim. So the Bulls are up with their first preseason game in Cleveland. I don't know if you know this or not, Drew, but we learned this from Lonzo Ball. Apparently, Cleveland got water. Like, I don't know if you heard that. Like, that's Lonzo Ball. Not only is he effective as a half court transition initiator, he's out here discovering water in places. like what can't Lonzo Ball do?
Lonzo's great, man.
Yeah. So the Bulls are up next Tuesday. First game of the preseason. Just very quickly to close out on this. Like, what are you looking for in that first preseason game? Obviously, preseason, like, not necessarily like deep conclusions you can draw from that, but it's going to be the first time we see this iteration of the Bulls. What are you looking for there?
A lot of questions. Is Kobe going to be healthy? If so, who starts alongside him and Josh and Vooch and Modest? How fast do they play? Are they crashing the glass? If so, is it affecting their transition defense? What are they doing to speed up the game or speed up their opponents or disrupt their opponents to try to get more possessions in the game? Are they taking charges? Are they getting over screens? Are they trapping? Are they zoning? Is Midas spending more time on the ball? Is he being more directly involved in half-court sets? Who are the first 10 or 11 guys to get into the game? How much does Noah play? Does he look like the game? Does it look like the game is too fast for him? Too physical for him? Does Billy let him play through his mistakes? Like, there's a lot of questions in regard to that first preseason game and what this team says it wants to be. You know, that's kind of where my mind is. Like you said, win or lose, however things shake out next Tuesday, you got to take it with a grain of salt because it is preseason. Cleveland's not going to be at full strength. Garland's out. Max Strus is out as well. So there's only so much we can gather. So it'll be one of those things where we just got to look at the process of things and maybe not the result necessarily. But I'm, you know, as skeptical as I am of where this thing is going and what I think it should be or what I think should be happening, I am interested to see what this team does this year, mostly about Modest, some about Josh and Kobe. Can they approximate those levels they reached last February and March? What does Billy do? Can he? Because Billy does not get enough credit. Like that ESPN 3-year power ranking that came out, I think it was either that one or I think it was that one where they looked at different areas of each franchise, whether it be management, a market, a draft. I think management was really low, and I think the coach was included in that. But having like a day or two after that came out and kind of thinking about it, I was like, man, Billy really has kind of made that thing go. You know, they owe something to Billy. You know, not monetarily, but I mean the way that he was able to get more from the defense, the way that he has been able to get more out of that team and out of the defense more often than not. Like, he definitely, I don't think, gets enough credit. I'm not saying he's a Hall of Famer or will be the coach whenever this thing actually takes another step up, but he's made some things shake for this franchise.
Yeah, I would offer the analogy. Yeah, I mean, Billy is not like a top tier NBA head coach per se, but you can't take away that he is a great basketball coach for sure. And I think, I would offer the analogy like, for people that know how to play the game of spades, like Billy Donovan's done more with Jackson 10s than I think any person could ever be asked to do. Like, he's never had the big joker. And if you play spades, you know what I'm talking about. It's just like, that's what he's getting year in and year out. He's getting Jackson 10s, and someone got to win games against, opponents who have all the top tier cards. Like, Billy Donovan just doesn't get those cards because the dealer wants you to be patient while he's dealing the card that he hits rigged.
That's an awesome analogy and much more respectful than the one I was that almost came out of my mouth. So I'm glad you put it that way. That was well said. That was really well said.
Yeah. Drew, man, we could go for like another hour on this, man, but I just can't thank you enough, man, for being available. And I'm glad you're back 100% health to be on here too, man. It's that time of year where these colds and bugs hit, and hope you bouncing back from that. Just thank you for being on. And where can people find your work? And also, I'm probably taking your answer a little bit, but if you could tell us a little bit about the bigs as well, because there's a cool story behind that I don't think everybody knows about.
First off, thank you, man. Anytime. I appreciate your flexibility with me because we were supposed to do this show last week and I had to pull out, so it's my fault that we were delayed in getting to this. But no, man, the bigs, man, Black-owned, independent media outlet, man, covering the Bulls, the Sox, the Bears, the Cubs. Our man Eugene McIntosh, one of the two founders, in addition to Terrence Tomlin, he's covering the Cubs. Man, I know there's any Cubs fans out there. Eugene is your man. Go look him up on Twitter, man. You can follow us at the Bigs Media on X. On YouTube and Instagram, you can follow us at It's the Bigs. Please do that. Please subscribe. Herb Howard covers the Bears for us. Like a blanket, like Herb is the go-to man for Bears coverage. He has a show that comes out twice a week now that's on YouTube. So again, subscribe. You'll get alerts to when his show is airing, and he covers it in a different way that I think fans will really appreciate and really enjoy. Man, Herb is good people. He's funny too. But yeah, man, that's where you can find us, man.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, follow the Bigs, follow Herb Howard. Honestly, I do enjoy his Bears coverage. Please let him know, like, he has a fan of me, because I think what he's doing on the Bears beat is amazing, and I hope he keeps going strong with that. Yeah, thank you, Drew, and yeah, follow Drew on X as well. Read his column again. They covered Bulls Media Day from this past Monday, because it's just great writing. And then, again, selfishly, like, for what writing I have done, like, I owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to Drew, because he's just done a lot of great things that I've taken, clues and stolen from in some ways. And he's been a great champion advocate for, like, the writing I've done over the last few years. Before we get out here, I also want to plug, please join our Nearest Per Possession Patreon community. We just did a huge announcement today. We're going to start accepting guest blog contributions on that vein, because this is a platform that I want to have heavily centered on quality basketball writing. It's near and dear to my heart, even though I'm like getting deeper and deeper into this podcast world. I do consider myself still a basketball writer. So I want to offer a platform for people. If you want to tell stories about basketball, if you want to write basketball stories, join our community, and you can have your stories told. You can tell your own stories, and that's dope. And that's what we want to do. And definitely, please like and subscribe to this video as well. Subscribe to Nearest Per Possession on YouTube, and we just want to keep this kind of vibe going, and just, again, help connect people to better basketball in there, tell quality basketball stories. So with that, thank you again, Drew. Really appreciate you coming on the pod, man. We're definitely going to have you back. And we're excited that basketball is back. So until next time, folks, everybody be good.